And that's true. Because every day, for some people, this day is not good. For some people, this day is the last one. I speak today now about my citizens of Ukraine who are defending, by paying the ultimate price, they defending freedom. I'm very happy that what I've seen here now and heard here now, I'm very glad to sense this mood, the unifying mood. I'm happy that we have unified today, all of you, all the countries of the European Union. But I did not know, but this is the price that we'll have to pay. And it's a tragedy for me, a tragedy for every Ukrainian, tragedy for our state. I mean, this high price, very high price. Thousands of people who were killed. 2 revolutions, 1 war. And 5 days of full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation. You know, I don't read off the paper, off the sheet, because the paper phase in the life of my country has ended. Now we're dealing with reality. We're dealing with killed people, real life, you know. And you know, I believe that today we're giving lives for values, for rights, for freedom, for the desire to be equal as much as you are. We are giving away our best people, the strongest ones, the most value-based ones. Ukrainians are incredible. And very often we love to say that we will win over everyone. And I'm very happy that you are not only talking about it, but you can see that. And we will overcome everyone. And I'm sure, I'm convinced, there is an expression, Ukrainian choice, European choice of Ukraine. That's what we're striving for, and that's what we're going to, and we went to. So I would like to hear that from you to us, we could hear that Ukrainian choice for Europe from you. I have some time off here because we have breaks between the missile strikes and bombardments. And this morning was a very tragic one for us. 2 cruise missiles hit Kharkiv, the city which is located to the borders of the Russian Federation. There were always many Russians there, and they're always friendly. There were warm relations there. More than 20 universities are there. It's the city that has the largest number of universities in our country. The youth is bright, smart there. The people who gathered there all the time and was gathering there all the time for celebrating all celebrations on the largest square in our country, the Freedom Square. And this is the largest square in Europe, and that's true. This is called the Freedom Square. Can you imagine this morning 2 cruise missiles hit this Freedom Square, dozens of killed ones. This is the price of freedom. We are fighting just for our land and for our freedom, despite the fact that all large cities of our country are now blocked. Nobody is going to enter and intervene with our freedom and country. And believe you me, every square of today, no matter what it's called, it's going to be called, as today, Freedom Square. in every city of our country. Nobody is going to break us. We're strong. We're Ukrainians. We have a desire to see our children alive. I think it's a fair one. Yesterday, 16 children were killed. Again and again, President Putin is going to say that is some kind of operation and we are hitting a military infrastructure. Where are our children? What kind of military factories do they work at? What tanks are they going with? Or launching cruise missiles? He killed 16 people just yesterday. Dear our people are very much motivated, very much so. We are fighting for our rights, for our freedoms, for life, for our life. And now we're fighting for survival. And this is the highest of our motivation. But we are fighting also to be equal members of Europe. I believe that today we are showing everybody that's exactly what we are. The European Union is going to be much stronger with us, that's for sure. Without you, Ukraine is going to be lonely, lonesome. We have proven our strength. We have proven that as at a minimum we are exactly the same as you are. So do prove that you are with us. Do prove that you will not let us go. Do prove that you indeed are Europeans. And then life will win over death and light will win over darkness. Glory be to Ukraine.
Thank you very much for your strong message, President, for your bravery and for your conviction. I will now give the floor to the Speaker of the Ukraine Parliament, Ruslan Stefanchuk, for his intervention.
The crisis will be a long one and it will be tough. We will have to hold strong, to pay the price of our decisions, and above all to go further in strengthening our union. At the Maidan in 2014 it was a European flag that was flourished by the Ukrainians to call for the end of Moscow's dominion. Today, in the shelters where they seek shelter from the bombs, the European flags can still be seen. We are the ones the Ukrainians are looking to. We must prove to the Ukrainians that they are right to believe in us. We must love Europe as much as they love it. Slava Ukraini.
Merci, madame.
Thank you very much indeed. Vice President Heidi Hautala, please.
Arvoisa puheenjohtaja.
President, the The attack on Ukraine has finally meant that we have shown our unity and that we've shown global leadership. That's what we've needed. I think we've been able to show that our strength now has been brought to bear to support Ukraine. Sauli Niinistö, the Finnish president, said that the masks now have fallen. All we see now is the face of war. What we see now is a very difficult development that we've seen happening over many, many years. We'll need to therefore work as the EU, as member states, and help our neighbours. We can't, in Finland, in a non-aligned member state, we were frozen, if you will, but now we're actually seeing possible that we might be in the same situation. Countries that put themselves in Russia's way, this happens to them. So we would line out to look for NATO.
Kollege Bardella.
Thank you much indeed, Ms. Bardella.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, President. Negotiations were underway more than ever, but Vladimir Putin took an unacceptable step, putting Europe under the scourge of war. The sovereignty of a people and country was violated. So solidarity with the people of Ukraine, they've entered into a resistance to defend their homeland. But the tragic lessons of history must not cloud our vision. We need to look at the complexities as we seek peace and de-escalation. For 20 years now, we've been moving in a direction that has taken us under the American flag, and we have an imbalance in our relationship with Russia. Our own freedom to act has been sacrificed to an illusion and an archaic conflict. We need to be firm, and we need to be unambiguous in our unity and our support for the people of Ukraine and our condemnation of this invasion. It is nonetheless dishonest for the EU institutions to make use of this to take a vision of federalism forward that the people of Europe reject. NATO, an expansion of the EU, won't help in any way. The priority is to stop the arms. Russia should not come back to face kind of sanctions which have not helped. Undermining the purchasing power of the people who are already suffering doesn't help with the strategic autonomy, and the sanctions which have been in place since 2014 have been in this case. We should not carry on using methods which we condemn elsewhere in Europe. Mature democracies such as ours shouldn't be closing down media stations, even if they're under foreign influence. It is also no point of fanning the flames of war. We need to seek peace and de-escalation, and we also need to return to a free, independent, respected France, which is able to operate in a balance in a multipolar world.
Frau Kollegin.
Anna Fotyga, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President. I salute heroism and resistance of Ukrainian people facing the unprecedented aggression from the Kremlin, Putin's Russian Federation. I really admire heroism of Ukrainian leadership. President Zelensky already finds his place in universal history. I admire heroism of commanders, soldiers, and in particular, ordinary people. You are invincible. It is our war as well, and in resisting aggression, you are the best part of us, the West. We are honored by your request to become a member of the European Union. We'll do our utmost to provide you candidacy status as soon as possible and immediately on unprecedented rules, the membership, therefore, because we need you, and of course you need us. In this, I speak on behalf of entire ECR, Polish delegation. All of them fully support the resolution as negotiated by me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Pineda Mano.
Thank you, President. We condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine. No nuances. Not 8 years since Donbass, we've seen impunity of the various assassinations by these gangs of Nazis. The Minsk agreements haven't been adhered to, but nothing can justify this attack. We're against war. And that's why we cannot support this resolution calling to arms, and which says that it's a guarantee of peace and refers to an instrument of war, which is NATO. And the sanctions that are against the civil population, well, never in the whole history of conflicts have sanctions helped anything. A fund to support peace cannot be used to buy weapons. We defend diplomacy, politics as the only way of resolving the conflict. We defend the sending of humanitarian aid and opening the borders for those refugees from that war. Our Secretary General, Julio Anguita, said, "May wars be damned and the swines that support them." Thank you. Kostas Papadakis is next, please.
Our condemnation of the capitalist aggression of Russia combines with the condemnation of the war crimes of the US, NATO and the European Union against the peoples of Yugoslavia, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria and Libya. The imperialist competition for spheres of influence and natural resources led to the capitalist war, which is paid with human lives and poverty. All this 30 years after the capitalist restoration of the Soviet Union, that socialism made it for people to live in equity for decades. Now, armaments are paid by the people, and this leads to escalation of the imperialist war, with the deep intervention of Greece through NATO bases. Peoples do not choose sides. No intervention, no involvement in the war, no armies outside national borders, decoupling from the EU and NATO. People in power.
Danke.
Thank you. Andrius Kubilius, you have the floor.
Dear brothers and sisters in Ukraine, dear colleagues, first of all, I would like to praise heroism of Ukrainian people. I would like to praise heroism of Ukrainian soldiers and the heroic leadership of President Vladimir Zelensky. Ukrainians are facing and defending themselves against the war launched by a real new Nazi regime in Kremlin. Putin is a real war criminal. Ukrainians are suffering because we in the West till now were too weak to stop Putin crimes from the very beginning. Ukrainians with their blood are fighting for their right to reunite with Europe. They are more Europeans than many of us. That is why we need to give them candidate status immediately, and then we need to design special, fast procedure for Ukraine to join us. There is an example of such a special procedure when in 1990 Eastern Germany integrated into European Union, and it took less than 1 year. So let's establish a special procedure also for Ukraine's swift reunification with Europe. After EU started to deliver weapons to Ukraine. When SWIFT and other banking sanctions were introduced, we need next steps. First of all, we need to stop imports of Russian oil and gas immediately. Each day, we are paying to Putin for 100 new T-72 tanks, twice more than Ukrainians are able to destroy during one day on the battlefield. Second, let's create a multi-billion free Ukraine fund to support resilience, reconstruction and modernization of Ukrainian economy. Let's finance it in the same way as we finance Next Generation EU Fund with EU borrowing in the markets. Thanks, Josep Borrell, for a good idea. Third, let's introduce full-scale SWIFT and other sanctions also against criminal Lukashenko and his banks. And the last point, stable peace on the European continent will be possible only if deputinization of Russia will happen. With the help of Ukrainian victories on the battlefields, with our sanctions, and with the help of ordinary Russians protesting on the streets, deputinization of Russia is coming closer and closer. Mr. Putin, you lost this criminal war. International Tribunal in Hague is waiting for you, for justice to be served. Justice, first of all, to Ukrainians. Разом до перемоги. Слава Украине!
Danke, Herr Kubilius.
Thank you, Mr. Kubilius. Mr. Sven Mikser, please.
Colleagues, I am proud at how strong and united we are today, but we have to be honest. We have been painfully slow and painfully late waking up to the true nature of Putin's Russia. I hope that today we finally truly understand the urgency and the existential nature of the current situation. If we do, it is imperative that we support Ukraine in every way possible without holding anything back. This includes lethal defensive equipment, economic and humanitarian aid, help to the refugees, and yes, also launching an honest and accession process for Ukraine to join our union. Regarding sanctions on Russia, for as long as the criminal ideology of Putinism remains in power in Russia, we have to go beyond punishing individuals and take the strategic decision of systemically weakening Russia's economy and industrial base. This is in our vital security interest. Yes, sanctions hit ordinary Russians too, and they are not our enemies. But let's admit it, it is primarily the responsibility of the Russian people to make sure that their mad Tsar cannot kill innocent people abroad. We should fully expect, and when possible, encourage the Russian people to take that responsibility seriously. Slava Ukraini.
Ich bitte nun Herrn
Next we have Malik Azman.
Thank you, President. The courageous Ukrainian people are standing up to an evil act of aggression. Europe answers Ukraine's call for help. We rise up to defend those who are fighting for freedom and democracy. The EU is showing unity, and we are finally showing that we are not just a soft power. We are crippling Russia's economy, isolating Putin's regime, and reinforcing Ukraine's defense. But this is just the start, and we have to do more by excluding more Russian operators and banks from SWIFT, by blocking the Russian Central Bank's use of Western currencies, and we should even consider blocking Russian ships in our harbors, and more. Also, we have to increase our support for Ukraine's economy and defense with money and weapons. My message to the Ukrainian people: Europe stands with you. Slava Ukraini.
Danke.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yannick Jadot, please.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues.
President, colleagues, at this very time, in the streets and in the houses, the Ukrainians are heroically defending freedom. They're defending their democracy, their territorial integrity. They are for Europe as a whole. They're doing this for peace, security and democracy on our continent. So yes, let's massively sanction Putin and the oligarchs and immediately incorporate Belarus into those sanctions. Yes, of course, let us militarily support the resistance in Ukraine. Yes, let's recognize the candidate status for the European Union of Ukraine, and let's exclude Russia from the entire international community and launch a major investment plan for climate and energy security to create renewable energies at the heart of the plan, because they are the energy of peace. And let's get out of the political complicity that is killing democracy and killing the climate. Let's act now. Let's be proud of Europe alongside the resistance, the heroic resistance of Ukraine. Slava Vilnia, Ukraina. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Urig, you have the floor.
Dear direction of the European Union, colleagues, before I will say a couple of words about Ukraine, I would like to ask you a couple of honest questions. Where were international sanctions when the United States killed 200,000 civilians in Iraq under the pretext of weapons of mass destruction? Where were your resolutions when the US, completely against the international law, bombed Yugoslavia, Libya or Syria? Where was Europe when Ukrainian mercenaries were killing children in Donbass or were burning civilians in Odessa? I hope that the actions of the last days are teaching us that all wars are bad. All wars are bad, not only the wars of the Russian Federation, but also the wars of the United States of America. We have to condemn all wars. What's happening in Ukraine is horrible, and it has to stop. It has to stop. But the hypocrisy of some of you colleagues who ignore wars only because they are American, that's also hypocrisy. It's terrible.
I'm glad to.
Next. Arnaud Danjean is the next speaker. Colleagues, the events we've seen affecting all of the rules in such a brutal fashion, against all rational thought, we've seen deliberate aggression, brutal aggression against a free, sovereign European nation. And Vladimir Putin is the only one that to be blamed. By doing that, he underestimated what the Ukrainians could do. He underestimated how they felt about their independence. That's what all autocrats think. He underestimated the reactions from Europe. Ukrainian resistance is admirable, and it needs our 100% support. We're very happy that Europe has taken its responsibility, shouldered its responsibility. But this satisfaction, working in unity, that shouldn't affect our lucidity. This terrible war will last. The aggressor may actually win militarily, even though it has a lack of morality. Let's not forget either that given there is war in Europe, and we've had wars since 1945 in Europe, we've seen already that Europe believes that it's ready to deal with these wars. Since 1991, we saw a decade of terrible wars in the Balkans. Now we are moving to the Ukrainian theatre. It is protecting more than just its status as an independent state. It's trying to... we have to make sure that we maintain our strategic awakening. We have to deal with the situation that others are imposing on us. This is an existential threat. Thank you.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you very much indeed. Next, Mr. Benifei.
Thank you, President. There is no greatness where there is no truth. These are the words of Leo Tolstoy, as quoted by David Sassoli a few months ago, addressing Putin. And we need truth again today to achieve peace. The truth of the Ukrainian people who've shown heroic resistance together with President Zelensky. The truth of a Europe which is finally fighting for its own political energy and defence sovereignty, and which is not afraid to speak out and to make sacrifices, to speak with one voice to stop war and save human lives, because victims come first, dead Ukrainians come first, the refugees we have to welcome, and those brave Russians who are sick of this military folly also come first. All peoples should be free, including Ukraine, to make their own decisions, make their own choices, without others trying to take decisions on their behalf. So we give full support today to the defence of our own democracy on Ukrainian soil. But we should be even braver than that. We should be there. Our governments, the EU institutions should take delegations to Kyiv to talk, to call for a ceasefire and to support the negotiations. Putin must stop. And then it will be all too clear to his own citizens too that both he and this inhuman war are mad. Long live free Ukraine. Long live free Europe.
Thank you much. Di grazie. Mr. Getter, please.
Vous avez perdu, monsieur.
Mr. Putin, you have lost. Now, of course, you will continue to kill and destroy and to cause mourning and suffering, but you have already lost because you cannot rebuild empires. Believe a Frenchman, and that absolutism will not last either. Believe a Frenchman again. Now, Ukraine is resisting heroically and magnificently and will do till its righteous victory. The Union has tightened its ranks now, that now is taking the hoped-for step to a political union, and you've brought the two sides of the Atlantic together. So you've lost, Mr. Putin, because your people no longer believe you and will not accept you going to massacre their Ukrainian cousins. You're just a war criminal, Mr. Putin. You're also an absolute menace to your very own country that you have led into a corner against its wishes. Long live peace, long live Ukraine, long live freedom, Mr. Putin.
No? Yes. Thank you very much. Bevor wir die Aussprache fortsetzen.
Before continuing the debate, I'm now going to give the results of the first round of voting from the day. Please be understanding of that to the next speakers. So the results of the voting round are as follows. On the amendments on Russia's aggression against Ukraine, paragraph 1 adopted, paragraph 2 adopted, paragraph 3 amendment 4 rejected, paragraph 3 accepted, amendment 5 accepted, 22, 23, 24 rejected, amendment 7 adopted, 29 part 1 adopted, 29.2 rejected, amendment 29 part 3 adopted, paragraph 15 part 1 and part 2 and part 3 and part 4 adopted, amendment 8 adopted, paragraph 16 amendments part 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 fall. Paragraph 17 adopted. After paragraph 17, amendments 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 adopted. 15, 16 and 17 rejected. Paragraph 18, part 1, part 2 adopted. Paragraph 19, amendment 9 rejected. Amendment 12 and 1925 adopted. On paragraph 19, parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, they fall. Paragraph 20, part 1 adopted. Paragraph 20, part 2 adopted. 21 amendments on part 1, 2, 3, 4 adopted. Paragraph 22, part 1 and part 2 adopted. On 23, 1, 2 and 3 and amendment part 3 also adopted. On 24, 11 is adopted. On 24, part 1 and part 2 they fall. 25 adopted. 27 adopted. Paragraph 28, parts 1, 2, 3 adopted. Paragraph 29, parts 1 and 2 adopted. Paragraph 31, Amendment 26 is rejected. On 31, Part 1 and Part 2 are adopted. 34, Amendment 27, rejected. 34, Part 1 and Part 2 adopted. 35, Parts 1, 2 and 3 adopted. Paragraph 36, Amendments 19 and 18 are rejected. After 37, Amendment 21 adopted. Paragraph 39 adopted. Paragraph 40, Parts 1 and 2 adopted. After 43, Amendment 10 adopted. After Paragraph 44, Amendment 20 rejected. After Paragraph 45, Amendment 28 adopted. Recital C, Part 1, 2, 3 and 4 adopted. After Recital D, Amendment 1 rejected. Amendment 2 adopted. After E, Amendment 3 rejected. Recital F, Part 1 and Part 2 adopted. Recital G, Parts 1 and 2 adopted. We shall now continue with our debate, and I'd like to ask our colleague Miroslav Radakovsky to come up to the lectern, please.
Vážení kolegovia, som
Dear colleagues, I am the only deputy from the European Parliament that comes from Eastern Slovakia. My friends and relatives close to Ukrainian border offer great help to refugees running from the war, and they really condemn this war between two Slavic nations. The Slovak Parliament also condemns the unjustified Russian invasion in Ukraine and calls for immediate stop of this aggression. Slovak Republic has offered the Russian and Ukrainian representatives as Bratislava for peace talks. Slovak Republic does not agree with the new independent countries, so Slovakia does not also prove the Kosovo status, because this was also with the help of foreign troops. I believe that in the near future there will be peace between two Slavic brothers, Ukraine and Russia, and we will do everything so that it will be this way. Thank you.
Thank you, and I now give the floor to our colleague Mr. Halicki.
Szanowni Państwo,
ladies and gentlemen, children have been killed, women have been killed, towns have been destroyed. People there are fighting for us, for freedom, for their freedom, but also for our values, European values, democracy. They're fighting for us, for Polish people, for Lithuanians, for you, ladies and gentlemen, in Western Europe. for all Europe to be able to enjoy security. They need weapons, that's obvious. But we can give them a lot more than weapons. We can give them a guarantee that once, thanks to those weapons, they've reconquered their freedom, they can live in peace in our family, in this European family. And that should be happening as soon as possible. Without looking at the procedure, we will find a way of implementing that dream. But let's be careful as well. Let's not make mistakes. If we want to suspend Nord Stream 2, why not suspend Nord Stream 1? We need to cut the head off Mr. Putin's mafia. We need to make sure they have no revenue. They should be there in The Hague International Tribunal for war crimes. And we should put our hand out today to everybody dreaming of peace. That's the sort of Europe we want. Europe living united and in peace. And anybody against that is working for Putin. Didn't start yesterday, this war in Ukraine. In 2008, let me just remind you, Russia attacked Georgia, Moldova, Transnistria. Blood was shed then as well. So we have to be supporting those in Russia who are fighting for peace, for Mr. Navalny. Long live free and democratic Ukraine.
Thank you. Mr. Jens Geier, you are the next one.
Thank you very much, President. I'm grateful for this special sitting because it provides an opportunity to express what the political message of the day must be. We condemn the breach of international law committed by Putin ordering the invasion of a peaceful neighbouring country, and that's the resolution that we tabled as the SPD, and we emphatically support it. Schultz is right, this is Putin's war, and we are protesting against him, not the Russian people. Our thoughts are with those people in Ukraine now who are fighting for their freedom, who are losing their lives, and who are fleeing to save their lives. Slava Ukraini. The EU and its institutions in this opportunity have shown that they can rise to the occasion, and there is an unprecedented resolve that they have demonstrated. The EU foreign policy therefore works only when member states want it. The sanctions are hitting hard. Many European politicians warned Putin about how costly an attack on Ukraine would prove, and that is being borne out now. Support for the refugees is continuing, and we are showing solidarity with the countries on the western border of Ukraine who are providing the first assistance. They are not standing alone. Our help for Ukraine and neighbouring countries require us to develop our policies further. How do we create security in a multipolar world? That question is one asked of us brutally by President Putin. We must find an answer. Thank you, colleague. And the next speaker is Mrs. Hilda Veltmans.
High Representative, colleagues, Putin has got what he wanted. More NATO, more European unity, more Western determination. And he really wants a dirty war, Putin, against the West, and now is threatening with nuclear weapons. Everything is irrational. He's a warmonger. But let us not forget, colleagues, autocrats throughout the world are looking at what's happening, how we are going to protect our values, how they're looking at our reaction today, and that will decide which world we live in tomorrow. 24th of February, the world changed. Let's make sure that in this crisis we see a new Europe born. A strong European defence, a strong European army to defend our values. Where we work together, we have a common asylum policy to be able to deal with the refugees from Ukraine. A Europe that is no longer dependent on Russia for the supply of its fuel. A Europe with European Solidarity Fund for all Europeans who are affected by Putin's war. That is the Europe that we need now. Long live freedom, long live Europe, Slava Ukraini.
Danke, Frau Kollegin.
Thank you. And the next speaker is the chairman of the Foreign Policy Committee of this Parliament, Mr. David McAllister.
Mr. President, thank you. The Russian military aggression and invasion against Ukraine is illegal, it is unprovoked, it is unjustified. This is indeed a crucial and historical moment, the moment of truth, as Commission President Ursula von der Leyen pointed out. Too many times in the past, the international community has been blind in front of unfolding tragedies. Today, we as a European Parliament are sending a strong and a united message to the Kremlin that we stand with Ukraine in full solidarity. As chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, I would like to thank the colleagues from the different political groups who drafted and negotiated this resolution, and I call on colleagues to vote in favour. I fully underline the very good arguments we have heard today. I want to add one point. Let us also strongly condemn the involvement of Belarus in this aggression against Ukraine. It was during last week's interparliamentary conference of the CFSP and CSDP in Paris that Svetlana Tsikhanouska made it very clear that the assault on Ukraine wouldn't have been possible if dictator Lukashenko wouldn't have had provided Russia the land and the infrastructure. The Lukashenko regime has assisted and enabled this Russian aggression. For this reason, the EU should apply further appropriate sanctions also on Belarus. Dear colleagues, the world will hold Russia and Belarus accountable for their actions. Thank you.
Danke, Herr Kollege.
Thank you. And now Mrs. Kathleen van Bremt has the floor.
Thank you, Sharon. Dear colleagues, today we feel sadness, anger for sure, but also pride. Pride in the unity of the European response to Putin's war crimes. Could you imagine just for 1 second that we did not have the European Union today? Then we would be divided, and divided we cannot have any response to Putin. But united as we stand today, we have Ukraine's back. Mr. Zelensky, I know you have other things to do, but you know we have your back. We stand with you, we stand with your people in full solidarity in fight for peace, freedom and democracy. And it is clear Putin will only listen to clear messages. So we need to use this clear language. So therefore, I think it's important that we stop buying gas from Russia. We need to cut up from that gas. It's at a high price, but it is doable. And if we do not pay the price today, we will be presented with the price tomorrow. And President Zelensky was right. He said this is the crisis of freedom and democracy. Well, dear colleagues in Europe, let's take this fight and stand up for our values. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame. Herr Kollege.
Thank you, Mr. Ilan Kyuchuk.
Thank you, dear President. Dear colleagues, we have a war in Europe on a scale and of a type we told belong to the history books. And let me be clear, this is not the war of Russian people. This is the Putin's war. Putin's regime is the one to blame for waging the war, killing civilians, destroying countries' infrastructure. Putin has attacked democratic values and European aspirations of the people of Ukraine. But the brave Ukrainians stood up strong, and they deserve fully fledged support. Colleagues, it's time to be on the right side of history and to grant Ukraine with candidate status. Dear Ukrainians, we will not let you go. I'm sure that the white will win over the dark. We are with you the brave people of Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Danke, Herr Muresan.
Thank you, Mr. Muresan. You are our next speaker. Thank you, President.
Now is the time for actions and clear words, so I will say 4 things very clearly. We can only live in safety and security within the borders of the 27 member states of the Union if we are surrounded by countries which are safe and stable in our neighborhood. This is why defending Ukraine means defending the European Union. We have to provide all support that we can to Ukraine, including financial support, and here we, the European Parliament, have a big role to play. We say very clearly we are ready to spend EU money to support Ukraine and to rebuild Ukraine. We are ready to spend EU money for defense. We are ready to spend more for democracy in Ukraine and everywhere else where needed as well. Secondly, when people in Ukraine say they want to join the European Union, our answer is yes, you are welcome. Ukraine belongs to Europe, Ukraine belongs to the European Union. This today we say with the very large majority of pro-European members of the European Parliament. We know there is still a lot to do until membership, many difficulties to overcome. But what proof do we need more than what the people of Ukraine are doing these days as a proof that the people of Ukraine can overcome all difficulties in view of becoming member of the European Union one day? We start work on this as soon as possible. Thirdly, the Republic of Moldova, a country of less than 3 million people, a neighboring country of the European Union, has welcomed more than 70,000 refugees on their territory in the past 5 days. They provided food, they provided shelter, they provided support, they acted in European spirit on the basis of European values because they are led by a pro-European president and a pro-European government. This is why I say everything that we offer to Ukraine, we have to offer to the Republic of Moldova right now in terms of EU cooperation, in terms of perspective for membership. The Republic of Moldova and Ukraine are equally important for the security of Europe. And last thing, the invasion of Ukraine and the assault upon Kiev would not have been possible without Belarus. This is why all political measures that we apply upon Russia, we should apply in the same manner upon Belarus. Thank you very much.
Danke vielmals. Zu Wort gemeldet.
Thank you, Mr. Robert Biedron.
Wojna wróciła do Europy.
War has come back to Europe. And this is a war between two worlds, authoritarian world and our world, where we want peace and democracy. It's a war perpetrated by Putin, and the heroes of the war are the Ukrainians, men and women. It's not just about aggression against Ukraine, it's aggression against the whole of Europe, all of our dreams of peace and our peaceful ambitions. That's why today we should remember that Europe will never be at peace until Ukraine is at peace. Ukraine is part of Europe. It's a moment of hope for millions of Ukrainians who are placing that hope in the EU. We should be opening our doors wide for Ukraine before Putin closes his on them forever. I would ask every member here, every lover of democracy, to show their support for Ukraine. They're fighting for their freedom, ours and theirs. Slava Ukraini.
Zu Wort gemeldet hat sich Herr Czolosz Dacian.
Mr. Dacian Czolosz has the floor. The citizens of Ukraine have the courage to stand up to one of the biggest armies in the world, and successfully so. They have the courage to fight, but also not to give up on the values of freedom, which are also the values of the European Union. This is a lesson for any tyrannical and criminal regime that wishes to abuse European aspirations and value, democracy and the freedom to choose one's future with blood and bombing. But colleagues, this lesson for the citizens of Ukraine is also a lesson for us. Those who have fought those who have taken hold of freedom and peace in recent decades. Our lesson is that we must have the determination and courage to open today the path to our union to all those Europeans who want to join in this project, who believe in it. And fear not, just as they are standing up to a great army today, so they will have the strength to rebuild their country after this disaster. The Ukrainians deserve the EU opening the door wide for them. The same applies to Moldovans and Georgians. The Commission has taken courageous, historic steps in recent days, and this should continue. United, we are a great power, and this can also be seen through the help given by the citizens of Romania, Poland, Hungary and Moldova and Slovakia to the refugees from the war. The countries that have opened their borders for refugees urgently need our support, and that must come. Slava Ukraina.
Das Wort hat unser früherer Präsident.
Thank you. Previous President and current Chairman of the Constitutional Affairs Committee, Antonio Tajani, has the floor.
Mr. President, we are all Ukrainians. Tutta l'Europa.
The whole of Europe, the whole of the West. We're on the side of freedom and democracy. We will continue standing up against Russian aggressors and stand up with the strength of our own values. The cohesion and the resistance that we've seen from the Ukrainian people and the strong role of Europe have forced Russia to sit at the negotiating table. We all want peace. Let us hope that the negotiations will lead to attaining fundamental aims such as peace. But peace cannot mean colonization of a free country. Many citizens of Ukraine are fleeing war, and we need humanitarian corridors with a refugee reception plan. We also need to take account of the events of the last few days and respond by having a true foreign policy and a true common defence policy. We need Europe to be even stronger in order to defend our values. We also need energy self-sufficiency. We need a single market for energy. If we're really to avoid being held hostage by any third party. And we also need solidarity. We need to help families and businesses. They've been mobilizing enthusiastically in favor of sanctions and willing to pay that price. But we need to ensure that we're helping those brave business people and families. We need to help them over the next few months and years, because it is true that freedom and democracy do come at a price. The price of our commitment. But our commitment has no price. We need to help those who have fought with such determination. Thank you.
Ich erteile nun Frau Helene Fritzon.
Helen Fritzon.
Herr talman.
Thank you, President. Commissioner, High Representative, we've seen war in Europe. Bombs are falling. Civilians are dying. Children are crying. Houses are collapsing. Putin's invasion can only be described as an invasion in cold blood without any regard for human suffering. The EU is more united than ever, and we are adopting the harshest sanctions in the history of the EU. President Zelensky, the people of Ukraine must understand that the EU stands with them. We show solidarity. Putin will see that there is powerful, tangible action to stand up to him. The EU is speaking with one voice, once and for all, and this aggression against Ukraine must cease immediately. We must immediately step up to defend Ukraine and to defend the EU. The Swedish flag has the same beautiful colours as the flag of Ukraine, and we stand with the people of Ukraine.
Mulțumesc, doamna președintă.
Thank you, Madam President. We've all seen how the unjustified, unprovoked aggression by the Russian Federation on Ukraine has caused a humanitarian disaster on a large scale. As we speak, thousands and tens of thousands of women and children and elderly people are trying to save their lives, crossing the borders. These people are entitled to their lives and civilized lives, the right to survival. People have mobilized governments and citizens in Romania. They're doing what they can, providing food and shelter. It's a tragic situation. And we've seen what absolutely deplorable conditions are experienced by these people who've lost their homes. For example, a woman who crossed the border with a small child in their hands, pregnant, and had to leave their husband home in their country. And that's what we're facing. And Ukraine, Moldova should be candidate countries. These people deserve respect and our support. Thank you.
I give the floor next to Ms. Tanja Fajon for 1 minute.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I didn't imagine I would ever stand here on this stage and state, stop the war in Ukraine. Those who advocate for war, suppress freedom, the rule of law and human rights must be stopped. Nationalistic autocrats also in Europe will be toppling democracies until we stop them. And Russia's conduct is threatening the post-war arrangements and security of the entire Europe, also exploiting the war in Ukraine for political purposes and profit is a disgrace. Only unity and the swift response of Western democracies is giving us hope. We Slovenians still carry a vivid and painful memory of the bloody Balkan Wars, and we want peace. Therefore, there will be a large rally in Slovenia today for peace. We have to help those affected by war. I thank everybody who is selflessly collecting and distributing aid to the refugees and to all people in distress, not only today but always. Every war ends at a negotiating table. It's absurd that therefore bloodbath, destruction and suffering ever happen in the first place. We should do everything in our power that peace is achieved through the power of international law and words and not due to the argument of force. Thank you.
Ujakovs for 1 minute.
Distinguished Madam President, dear colleagues, I will speak Latvian today, but being myself an ethnic Russian, I would like to try to address Russians in Russia and in Europe as well. Šobrīd, kad Kremlis īsteno zemisku un noziedzīgu kāru pret
Thank you much indeed. We see this war against Ukraine and we see that Russia should be ashamed. But Russians are protesting. And in Europe, there are a lot of protests as well. And a lot of Russian speakers in Europe, they are taking part in these protests as well. Being Russian isn't a shame. But it's difficult to justify what's happening in Kharkiv. We need to do more in Europe. We need to give the EU the chance to become an EU member as quickly as possible. And now in Russian.
Pilsoņi un prezidenti, ka jūs esat musē. Mēs esam pret Kremli, mēs esam.
Well, we are against the Kremlin, but we're not against the Russian people. And it's important for us to say no to this criminal war in Ukraine.
Important debate for this House. I invite, on behalf of the Commission, Vice President Šefčovič to take the floor.
Madam President, Honourable High Representative, my dear colleague, Commissioner McGuinness, honourable members of the European Parliament, but first and foremost, dear Ukrainians, Szanowni Ukraińcy. I have to say that I never seen a debate in European Parliament charged with so much emotions, solidarity and a sense of common European belonging. As you know, we come from different countries, from different political families, but we are discussing today an attack against the most fundamental European values that we all share. And therefore, today we are all Ukrainians. Сьогодні ми всі українці. Because the people of Ukraine are fighting for our values. They are fighting for our freedom, and they are fighting for everything we believe in, for Europe as we know it, for Europe as we treasure it. And we will need the same unity as we felt this afternoon in this House in the days, weeks and months ahead. It's clear that Kremlin has failed in its goal to crush Ukraine. It failed to break spirit of brave Ukrainians. It failed to divide or scare Europe. On the contrary, bravery and courage of all Ukrainians and calm and determined leadership of President Zelensky and his government energize not only Ukraine and Ukrainians, but the whole Europe, all democracies, and I believe every peace-loving human being in the world. Mr. President Zelensky, we have been working together to reform Ukraine. We have been working together on energy security, on energy independence. And we will be working together to build strong, democratic Ukraine. Mr. President, you ask us to do proof that we are with you. And I would like to respond to you, we are. We will make sure that the sanctions are vigorously applied, and not only on Russia, but also on Belarus. We will do our utmost to supply you with everything you need. And we will be with you to rebuild your beautiful country after your victory. Nobody in Europe can doubt today that the people that stand up so bravely for our European values belongs in our European family. And therefore, I want to reassure you that as we welcome your women and children in Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and other European countries, that in the same warm, receptive way, we will open our arms to Ukraine in our common house of peace, democracy and prosperity called Europe. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Vice President Šefčovič. And now, on behalf of the Council, I invite High Representative Borrell to take the floor.
Señora Presidenta, querido comisario, señoras y señores.
President, Commissioner, members. Following this aggression in Ukraine, Russia is reaching a crucial juncture in its post-Soviet existence. Russia has come to the end of an era in its relations with the EU. The Minsk agreements are now a thing of the past. Putin has done away with them. They were not perfect. They arose at a point in time when we needed a ceasefire in a previous conflict. Nonetheless, those agreements guaranteed Ukrainian territorial integrity and respect for those agreements, which is now inconceivable, was something that led us on a path towards a normalization of diplomatic relations between Russia and the EU. That is now inconceivable. And this is why I'm saying that Russia has now reached a turning point in terms of its post-Soviet existence. This awful conflict can only lead to a positive outcome of a return of Russia to the fold of respect for fundamental principles. This is the opportunity which we have in the EU. We need to seize this opportunity to put forward mechanisms and treaties that will ensure that there are mechanisms in place for ensuring security. Stronger mechanisms in place that will allow us to be very vigilant about their implementation. In the enthusiasm of a parliamentary session, one can forget that the path of dialogue, the path of speaking and listening to one another, is at the heart of what we do in Europe. We should not forget that. We are not a military body. We're not declaring war on anyone. We've actually turned our back on war as a solution, as a way to resolve conflicts. What we're doing is standing alongside a victim of an aggression, and we are mobilizing all of our diplomatic resources in order to ensure that we can safeguard the security of Europe, but also in order to find a solution to the conflict. Because there are necessary and inevitable sanctions, yes, but above and beyond that, we need solutions. Sanctions will hit, and are indeed already hitting, the Russian economy. And Putin cannot claim ignorance of that. He had warnings. President von der Leyen, the President of Council, have said on numerous occasions sanctions will impose a very high price, and that is now going to happen. The ruble has lost 40% of its value. Almost half of the currency reserves of Russia will be beyond reach, with a significant impact on the economy. There's a threat of default. So taking a few banks out of SWIFT is child's play compared to this. Because if you look at the figures, Russia had been preparing for some time to face a situation such as this, and it had been moving its dollar and euro reserves out into yuan, renminbi, and gold. So they're moving out of dollars and euros, less than 40% of their total reserves now. But 40% is still significant. 135 million in gold. But even if it's billions in gold, who's going to buy it? In order to sell it, you need a buyer. Sanctions are going to prevent the mobilization of these resources. So these financial measures are certainly unprecedented.
The measures will go in the direction of a potential default, which will have consequences for the whole financial system, for the global financial system. So don't minusvalorate the importance of what we have decided to do and what will follow. I want to stress that. And now we have to work diplomatically all over the world, reaching out all countries in order to build a state of the mind in order the aggressor being condemned. And on that, I can assure you, me as High Representative, all my colleagues, members of the Foreign Affairs Council, all our delegations, all our embassies will be strongly working in order to get a result on the vote in the General Assembly. This is the most important thing that we have to do right now. Because I repeat, this is an issue which belongs to the foreign and security policy, which is intergovernmental, and it's the member states who have to take the lead on this response and the diplomatic sphere. The second thing that has been discussing today, and is maybe the more important that many of us could believe, is our dependency from the gas. The President has been saying all the time, we have to reduce this dependency. But I've been listening for the last 20 years that we have to decrease this dependency, and this dependency has been increasing during the last 20 years. So from now on, let's put work in accordance with our saying, because we pay $700 million for the world for gas and oil and coal imports from Russia. And every year we import 200 billion cubic meters of gas. We have to increase renewables, President said, have renewed hydrogen, but keep in mind that the amount of power in a country like Italy a year in renewables is less than 500 million of cubic meters. So we have in front of us a strong work to do, and we have to remain committed to it. And we have to explain to our people what does it mean. This is a good occasion to develop the best and most noble side of the political activity, which is pedagogy. That's the moment to do pedagogy. And I understand the enthusiasm and the approach of a parliamentarian chamber in a moment like this. I've been parliamentarian as you many years, even president of this house, and I know that this is the moment to show enthusiasm and support. But then we have to go to act. And next time, when you discuss again the budget of the European Union, remember that we need resources for do what today we are doing with an intergovernmental fund that this Parliament has never approved, because it's not in your competences. Put more defense and security on your mindset. Stop discussing theology about strategic autonomy. Call it the way you want, but we have to be more responsible. We have to take our responsibility more in our hands. We have to be strategically responsible, and this has nothing to do against weakening the transatlantic alliances, which, by the way, have been proven to be stronger than ever. And our unity with the transatlantic partners has been 100%. Nothing against weakening NATO, because we develop our capacities. We have to become a hard power. I know that the words may afraid someone, but hard power, I insist, is not just talking about military. Hard power is having a power to coerce, the power to influence the decisions of the others. And what we are doing on these measures is a lot of hard power. Be prepared for the answer. Be prepared for the consequences. Don't put all your strength in your mouth. Don't say nice things only. From now on, we have to be prepared to resist. We have to be prepared to act in the long term with a clear understanding of which are our challenges and our capacities. This is the moment for the European Union to discuss about what do we want to be, what we are, which are the limits of what we can do, and what do we want to do in the future. And in order to face the challenge of the future, there is a lot of things that we have to review. A lot of things about our procedures, our methods, putting more attention on our capacity to act than in the time that we spend on internal discussions. What's happening today in Ukraine, remember me, Budapest in '56. I was 9 years old, But I remember listening to the radio how the Russian chars were entering Budapest. Would remember me, 88, the Prague Spring. I was an officer in the Spanish army then, and my unit was put into alert. I don't know why, because it was completely useless. On both cases, we did nothing, because we couldn't know anything. But from now on, we have to face a confrontation between us, democracies, people who believe on freedom, on multi-party system, where citizens choose their governments. When we live in a free market economy, trying to put together economic efficiency and social cohesion with the autocratic regimes, which are supporting themselves with a clique of people who take advantage of the system, while the great majority of the people don't improve their living conditions. All the war treasury that Putin is taking from our gas payments doesn't go to increase the well-being of the Russian people. It goes to make more powerful his war machine. Tout l'argent qu'on paye pour le gaz.
Everything which is being spent on Russian gas and other goods are not helping the people of Russia. That's just going into military expenditure by Russia. And I think very honestly that the time has come for Europe to think of itself. What do we actually want for the future? What do we want to be in the future? And I think we want to be something more than what we are now. That is the true challenge which we will have to face over the next few weeks, months and years. And that is why the Conference on the Future of Europe can play a very important role. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, High Representative. That concludes the debate. The vote is already open and will be open until 4:15. And I now invite all the colleagues. There are as many people in the esplanade waiting for us to address them. Looking forward to that. Thank you very much.